Well, recap. We'll start with a recap. Obviously coming off of an open week, gave our guys an opportunity to certainly recover, but work on, those things that we needed to get better at from the A&M game, and I think they're pretty obvious, right? In terms of, our ability to have balance on offense. The quarterback running game, special teams, consistency in that area. We're all focused opportunities for us during the bye week. So recovery, areas to improve on within the execution of our offense, defense, and special teams. And again, get some conditioning, weight training in as well. So brought the guys back yesterday, got a chance to do scouting reports and weight train and get an opportunity to, give our guys an opportunity, a bonus, if you will, look at Alabama. And now we take on an outstanding football team, probably as balanced of a football team that we're going to play this year. And when I mean balanced, I don't mean necessarily in terms of offense, defense, in terms of 50-50. I mean talent level across the board. Apparently no weaknesses in my eyes relative to their talent level. I think, sometimes when we look at teams, we look at, potential weaknesses at a particular position. I don't see any with this team. Defensive line, linebackers, secondary, safeties, corners, offensive line, running backs, quarterback, wide receivers. This is a extremely talented football team with no apparent weaknesses. Well coached, and certainly, a football team that, we'll have to play our best against. Leading into the game, the keys to success are pretty obvious from an offensive standpoint, taking care of the football. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have to have better balance, offensively, and that will be a prerequisite. Defensively, stopping the quarterback is going to be paramount. Milroe's outstanding. He also can throw the football, so, he is a dual threat. I think first down is an important down as well. I mean, they're one of the best third down and short conversion teams in the country. We need to get them behind the chains. So that'll be an important element of the game. Again, continue to get the ball to our playmakers. Neismar is still second in SEC in passing with 20 touchdowns. Lacey, Taylor, Anderson, all have been big play guys for us. Swinson and Weeks on defense, continue to play to our strengths is going to be absolutely important. Kalen DeBoer's done a great job. Wherever he's been, they had a great victory against a top 25 team in Missouri and beating them 34-0. And, of course, they've got the great win over a number one Georgia team earlier in the season. So, as I mentioned, Milroe, tandem backs and Miller and Haynes, we all have heard and seen about what Ryan Williams can do. Tight ends, they're deep. Offensive line, experienced. And then defensively, I think Malachi Moore is probably one of the most productive safeties in the country. Lawson is a handful, probably one of the more experienced linebackers in the country. Overton is the transfer from A&M. I mean, it's a really good football team. Nicholson won the Groza last year at kicker. So as I mentioned, it's a team that has no apparent weaknesses in my eyes in terms of every single position up and down the board. Again, we're up for the challenge. We're excited about it. Playing at Tiger Stadium has been good medicine for us. Now we've got to go out and execute and play LSU football for 4 quarters. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
Hey, Brian. Was Garrett Dellinger's ankle sprain the kind that would require did it require a surgery?
Yeah, he had a tightrope surgery, so he will be out for this weekend's game against Alabama.
Hey, Coach, a lot of people are calling this a playoff game in itself. Do you embrace that kind of talk? Does that give urgency to it, or does it create anxiety and you stay away from that?
Yeah, I think each game that we play is a new game in itself, and I think it goes to what I talked about. We're much more focused on playing 4 quarters of football. Our focus last week was, cleaning up the things that we needed to take care of internally. And so our focus, where our real work was thinking about what we needed to do better to play at a higher level. Look, all that other stuff is out there, but it doesn't help us relative to what we need to do. And I know there's been other national talks about, this is an elimination game. Well, if this is an elimination game, every game in the SEC is an elimination game. Everybody that has a loss, everybody that has 2 losses, everybody that plays each other, it's an elimination game. So we can kind of like put that to rest. This is really about each team in the SEC knows where they're at, right? I mean, the record speaks for itself. This is about you need to play your very best when your best is needed.
Coach, we talked a lot about how the running game is important to stay ahead of the sticks, but how important is a guy also like Aaron Anderson in the slot who can, kind of keep you guys ahead of the sticks in the quick game?
Yeah, no doubt, and he's been there for us, right? I mean, I think we have, guys like Mason Taylor and Aaron Anderson, and then, certainly Kyron Lacey's been big for us on 3rd down. We've got to be more consistent across the board and, creating a little bit more uncertainty in terms of what we are doing and making sure that we can, get the ball to the playmakers, but be able to include that in a variety of different ways and include, the screen game and misdirection and the running game and create a little bit more uncertainty in terms of what we're doing offensively. And I think you'll see that as we continue to move forward.
Ryan, in that regards, C.J. Daniels seems to be so pivotal to opening up a lot of your offense. How healthy is he? Can you kind of elaborate on what he gives you guys as far as versatility? And then just with the potential of a storm coming this weekend, how much do you monitor that? How much have you talked with the conference about that?
Yeah, so CJ is much better than he was, obviously, going into the A&M game. And I thought he did a terrific job getting himself ready. I thought our training staff did an incredible job, our doctors, in helping him get ready for a game that, in many instances, it was a game-time decision. I know a lot of you were there, and you saw him working out before the game to get himself ready. Unfortunately, he couldn't answer the bell in the second half, but he's further along. We don't have to put out a report, but I would say he's much better than he was a couple of weeks ago, and the expectation would be that he's going to be able to help us. Goodness, I mean, there's so many things to consider going into, the Alabama game. The one thing I didn't have to think about, I thought, was, another storm coming. But as we get closer to game time, probably tomorrow, we'll probably have to look a little bit closer at the weather situation, but is definitely on the list now.
Yeah, Brian, last month of the season coming up, SEC, a lot of one-loss team, a lot of two-loss teams. NIL, has it created the parity that you see in pro football? Has it brought that to college football?
Yeah, I don't know that it's hard for me to really assess that like halfway through the season and looking at the rosters. Look, there's been transfers, right? There's been transfers from, different schools that have made impacts, and maybe some have negatively impact rosters. But those are choices, right? Those are choices that programs and coaches make. So, I don't know that if you take in its totality, whether it's been a plus or a minus. I think some schools would say it's been a positive for us. Some might say, well, maybe I shouldn't have made this decision, but it's still a choice that you make. So in terms of being able to kind of give a statement as to whether it's good or bad, I think it's out there, and then you have to make that individual decision as to, whether that's something that you want to be part of relative to the transfer portal. But NIL is a good thing. NIL is a positive thing that you have to be able to manage within your program. And I don't think that has sidetracked us. I think transfers and making decisions on all of those things has probably been one of the bigger issues, because it changes your roster, it changes the chemistry, it changes, how you look at your roster each and every year.
You talked about it last week, using last week to clean some things up. How was that received from the guys? Is it something as simple as when you see tape, it really clicks with them, or is there further explanation needed?
Well, I think each situation is different. Look, they clearly knew what happened in the Texas A&M game. I mean, just to recap, we turned the ball over 3 times and we couldn't stop a quarterback. We didn't have the emotional flexibility to kind of flip the switch. And did we spend enough time in helping our guys do that, right? So this is coaches coaching and players playing. Did we do our best? And obviously we did not, right? So collectively, we all had to take ownership in that last week. So it wasn't a fun week to be around, but we've put that past us, and our focus and attention has been on working on getting better in those areas that we know that we have to get better in as coaches and players, and getting prepared for a really good Alabama team.
Coach, right down here to your left, can you talk a little bit about Paul Mabinga and what you guys saw out of him in that A&M game, and just in terms of getting him ready to maybe go for maybe more than just one game this week?
Yeah, I mean, Paul has steadily worked himself up into what would have been what I would call a key backup, right? Somebody that, is poised to go in a pivotal time, and you expect him to get the job done. Now he's a starter for us, most likely, for at least this week, right? And so his development has been one where I think he's made his most progress through execution. He's a quick study. You don't have to tell him twice. He understands our scheme in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. This has been really just about the physical development of Paul, more so than it has been about his mental abilities relative to picking up what we want to do and how we want to do it.
In what ways is Jalen Milroe maybe used differently in Kalen DeBoer's offense than what they asked him to do a year ago under Tommy Rees?
Well, last year, Matt, it was evolving. I don't know that they knew what they wanted to do because it was a quarterback controversy. But they were kind of playing multiple quarterbacks last year at Alabama. I think they had 2 or 3 quarterbacks going back and forth. Then they kind of settled on Milroe just before they got to us, and it was, I think, big chunk play. It was run the quarterback. Here they've had all spring, and they've settled on a system with a starting quarterback. So it's consistency week in and week out. They're doing the same thing with him week in and week out. So there's a comfort level within the offense. When we got to him last year, you weren't really sure what you were going to get. It was a little bit of everything. And now there's a consistency within their offensive structure, and there's a comfort level in terms of what he's doing.
Brian, recently Jacoby Guillory just said he decided he's going to use his last year of eligibility in return. What does that mean for you guys next year? I know we're still got a lot of games to play this year, but just being able to know that he's going to be back for the defense next year, just kind of how much of a boost is that?
Well, he's a stalwart. He's a physically gifted player, strong, mature. He brings a presence, certainly for us in terms of the leadership part. And he's a really good football player. So you're just adding some stability to the defensive line, with some really good young players that are getting seasoned this year. So whereas much as it was a concern or a question mark coming into the season, I think as we evolve through the season, with having him back and the guys that have gotten a lot of work at that position and in recruiting, I think we're going to find that back to being what it should be here at LSU, and that's a strength at that position.
Coach, after the A&M game, you said we need to get Garrett Nussmeier some help. We need to help him out. How productive was the open date in terms of looking at your running game and some of those other things that you can improve on in this Bama game?
Yeah, I mean, I stand behind my comments. Now they have to come to fruition, right? I mean, we've got to go do it. And part of it was, look, I mean, you know, Garrett can't be the guy that feels like he's got to go do everything. And part of it has to come from Garrett to understand that, you know, I don't have to make a play every time I'm out there. 0 is okay, right? So a little bit comes from Garrett, and a little bit comes from play calling, and a little bit comes from, you know, the ability to commit to making sure that we have some more balance in terms of the running game. And that means we got to block better, you know, and I don't mean just the 5 guys. I mean, you know, the receivers and the tight end and the backs got to do a better job of seeing things and getting to the second level and making people miss. So it's an all-in thing, right, when we say that. It's not just saying one guy's got to do a better job at, you know, giving Garrett, you know, more assistance. Everybody's got to be involved in that.
Oh, yeah, Coach, right here. Obviously, it's going to be a big game for guys like Zy Alexander and Ashton Stamps going head-to-head with Ryan Williams and Bernard. Just what have you seen from that tandem over the last several weeks in terms of their development as you've settled into those 2 guys, and how has maybe Corey Raymond had an impact on, you know, their development this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'd like to stand here each and every week and credit, you know, Corey or Bo Davis or, you know, Brad Davis or Joe Sloan. I mean, you know, that comes with the territory, right? At the end of the day, players have to play consistently based upon trusting the technique and trusting their ability. I think what we see here with the corners in particular is a trust in the teaching and then a trust in themselves. They're trusting themselves a lot more. They're playing with a lot more confidence. And I think that that's the next step in the maturation of a player like Stamps, for example. I think Alexander's had a little bit more of that because he's a little bit more of an older player in a sense, right? But that's really it, right? Players playing with more confidence, I think, at that position, trusting their teaching, and certainly trusting themselves that they can go out there and they can play with a great deal of confidence and swagger.
Hey, Coach, over here, a little bit of a 2-parter. First, I mean, college game day, coming to campus, the first time since you've been the head coach at LSU. Just talk about them coming over here to LSU and getting prepared for a big game and get your guys maybe not distracted by the big environment this Saturday. And the second part, Kalen DeBoer. I know he went up the coaching ranks like yourself from Division II up to now. Just what have been some of the conversations you've had with him since he become the head coach at Alabama?
Yeah, we're excited about having game day here. Certainly, it's great for the community. It's certainly great for our campus. The exposure of game day, you know, does a great deal for, you know, the just entire identity, right, of Baton Rouge, the state of Louisiana, LSU. College football is kind of like the hub, you know, when you bring it in. So I think that's going to create a lot of excitement, and you know, we're pleased that they've chosen LSU for that. Kalen and I have not had a chance to speak, but just in passing, it's just one of those things where, you know, he was playing for a national championship, then got the job, and it's been kind of a whirlwind for him. So anytime that we've gotten together, it's been in passing, but we do share a common bond, and, you know, we both worked our way up. You know, we both learned how to do the laundry, literally and figuratively, and so, you know, those kinds of experiences lend itself to having a mutual respect for each other. And I know I respect the work that he's done, and you know, he's continuing to do it on every level.
Ryan, your thoughts, if any, on the SEC apparently cracking down on teams faking injuries? And also a second question, if you have time. Didn't you guys make a point earlier this year to try to get your players registered to vote and voting? Yeah. And how did that go? You know, even give a percentage.
Well, I thought that the memo was timely. Appreciate our commissioner standing out amongst college football and making it, clear that this kind of, I think, nonsense was maybe the word that was used, needs to stop. It's silly. The game doesn't need to get to a level where, you're using that as a way to slow down a game, one way or the other. Be that as it may, I think just standing up and saying enough's enough is what needed to happen, and I'm glad the commissioner did that. As far as voting, I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that our players, when we've asked them to be involved in the community, they have been on it. We took the time to ask them to vote and register to vote. So my expectations are that they're pretty tuned into how important this election is, and every election. And when we brought in Go Vote, which is a local community organization here on campus, they talk not only about the presidential election, but how important the local elections are that can impact, your communities. So we didn't just talk about the presidential elections. We talked about the local elections, how important they are in terms of, things that are important to you. So this was not kind of just, hey, go out and vote. This was, we spent time with our players and making sure they understood the impact at grassroots levels, how important it is to vote.
Hey, Coach, does Dellinger have a chance to return later in the season, or like postseason, or what do you think?
We're expecting him to have a solid chance for Florida.
Brian, with the running game, is it something where y'all thought maybe because Garrett just hasn't gotten that part of his game yet, where he's taking the ball and running it himself on zone reads and those sorts of things, that maybe that needs to change in the offense?
I would like to give you a simple answer, but it's not a simple answer. There are, when you're in 11 personnel, one back personnel, it becomes a numbers game, right? And so those numbers have to be right. The quarterback has to get you in the right plays. Your backs really need to be good at discerning, what the right cut is. Your tight ends and receivers have to be really good at blocking on the perimeter. This is an all-in thing. And look, the question is a good question, but it has a lot of layers to it. We have to be better, and we need to be better.
Yeah, Brian, can you give an update on West Weeks, just his health situation, if you all plan on playing him again for the remainder of the season?
Like, he's got games remaining. Our hope is, because he has another season of eligibility, that if we could save that season of eligibility, we would prefer to do that. We've had a conversation with the family and with West about doing that. We think he's an outstanding leader. We feel as though, as things move forward, to have a veteran presence coming back next season would be in everybody's best interest. But we've made it clear, if there's an injury and there's a need to win football games and win a championship, he's got to be ready. So it's kind of where we're at right now relative to Wes.
In the backfield, where have you seen some of these guys grow? Gio Paez being one of those guys, and then you coach the D2 level, just a guy like JVR Suggs becoming a contributor and making some plays for you guys.
Yeah, so each guy has a different, well, first of all, they're all the same in terms of how they're coached. Bo does a really good job of treating everybody, equally and fairly, but each one has a different skill set. Like Suggs, for example, has got great feet and is a slippery pass rusher. Gio is a real solid, gap-conscious player against the run. Not that he can't rush the passer, he can. But just pointing out what their difference is. Schoen is emerging as a player that's big and physical, that can give us some snaps. And Ahmad Bro has been a very active player for us, using his hands extremely well. So it's really kind of mix and match. And then we've moved Parashand inside, who gives us a little bit of a veteran presence and a little bit of all those things, just not quite as physically as big as those guys. He's about 285 pounds. So it's really been taking the strengths of each one of those guys and matching them, given the circumstances.
Hey, Coach. Alabama is the fourth team with the most flags during the season. What can you guys do to create those flags and take advantage of that?
I mean, I think, hopefully our crowd's loud, and will cause a lot of pre-snap penalties. That's one thing we can hope for. Maybe the lights, we'll turn the lights off on them a couple of times. We're going to try everything. But, other than that, it's really about, for us, maintaining our composure. And really, for us, we can't be that team, that gets flagged. Look, there's always going to be a penalty, because there's extra effort, and I get that. But, we can't have the pre-snap penalties. We can't have the ones that are out of emotion. And so, we'll look to continue to play hard, and hopefully that Tiger Stadium becomes a little bit too much for the Crimson Tide to handle. All right, thank you.